Rosy Retrospection. You think back to a summer years ago and remember it as golden, endless, easy, even though at the time you were bored half the days and stressed about things that felt huge back then. The bad parts have quietly faded while the good parts got brighter. This is called rosy retrospection, the tendency for memory to soften difficulty and amplify warmth the further an experience moves into the past. Researchers who studied vacationers found people rated a trip more positively weeks after it ended than they did during the actual trip itself. Time doesn't just store memories, it edits them, smoothing rough edges until the past feels gentler than it ever actually was while you were living inside it. Proust Effect. A specific smell drifts past you, someone's laundry detergent, a certain rain on pavement, and suddenly you're not in the present moment anymore. You're 8 years old in a kitchen that no longer exists. It happens faster than thought, before you even register what triggered it. This is called the Proust Effect, the phenomenon where smell and taste trigger unusually vivid, emotional memories more powerfully than sound or sight. Scientists trace this to anatomy. The smell pathway connects almost directly to the brain's memory and emotion centers, bypassing the usual processing detour other senses take. It's why a single scent can undo years in half a second, pulling an entire forgotten afternoon back into the room with you. Anemoia. You look at an old photograph from decades before you were born. People at a diner, a street you never walked, and feel a strange ache, as if you missed something you never actually had. It isn't quite sadness, but it isn't quite nothing either. This is called anemoia, a term for nostalgia toward a time or place you never personally experienced. It shows up in old film photographs, vinyl records, decades you've only seen through movies or stories from parents and grandparents. Psychologists connect it to how vividly the brain can simulate a past through secondhand memory, borrowing someone else's history and feeling a genuine, if borrowed, kind of longing for it. Saudade. You think of someone or somewhere gone, not with sharp grief, but with a quiet, aching fondness, missing it in a way that almost feels good to sit inside. It's not quite sadness and not quite happiness, but something suspended between the two. This is called saudade, a Portuguese word for a deep emotional state of longing for someone or something absent, often something that may never return. Unlike simple sadness, saudade carries warmth inside the ache, a bittersweet appreciation for having had the thing at all. It's the feeling of a closed door you don't necessarily want reopened, just remembered clearly enough to visit sometimes. Reminiscence Bump. When people are asked to recall their most vivid life memories, an unusually large number cluster around adolescence and early adulthood. Not childhood, not recent years, but specifically that stretch between roughly 10 and 30. This is called the Reminiscence Bump, a well-documented pattern in memory research where people disproportionately recall events from their identity-forming years. Scientists believe this window holds more emotional weight because it's when most people experience their first real independence, first heartbreaks, first big decisions, memories the brain tags as significant because they shaped who someone became. Decades later, those years still surface first, sharper and more detailed than memories from almost any other period of life. Telescoping effect. You think of an event as recent, maybe a couple years back, only to realize with a jolt that it actually happened almost a decade ago. Time compresses in memory, pulling distant things closer than they really are. This is called the telescoping effect, the tendency for people to misjudge how long ago something happened, usually perceiving past events as more recent than they actually were. Psychologists studying eyewitness memory found this distortion is consistent enough to affect testimony accuracy, not from lying, but from how the brain naturally compresses time the further back a memory sits. The years blur together, and the past ends up feeling closer than the calendar says it should. Mono, no, aware. Watching cherry blossoms fall or noticing a favorite song is about to end, there's a specific tenderness that comes from knowing a beautiful moment is temporary, and that its ending is part of what makes it beautiful at all. This is called mono no aware, a Japanese concept describing the gentle sadness and appreciation that comes from recognizing the impermanence of things. It isn't grief exactly, more an awareness that beauty and loss are tied together, that nothing stays, and that this is not entirely a tragedy. The feeling deepens the appreciation rather than ruining it. A quiet reminder to notice things precisely because they will not last. Hiraeth. You drive past the house you grew up in, now owned by strangers with a different car in the driveway, and feel a pull towards something that isn't quite the building itself, something harder to name than simple homesickness. Even walking back inside wouldn't bring it back. This is called Hiraeth, a Welsh word for a deep longing for a home that may no longer exist, or perhaps never existed exactly as remembered. It isn't just missing a place. It's grieving a version of belonging tied to a specific time that has already moved on without you. The house still stands, but the home attached to it in memory is the part that's gone. Sehnsucht. There's a quiet ache that shows up on ordinary afternoons, a longing for a life you can almost picture but have never lived, some idealized version of things just out of reach. It isn't sadness about anything specific, more a yearning without a clear object. This is called Sehnsucht, a German term describing an intense, wistful longing for an alternate or more complete existence. Psychologists have studied it as a distinctly human trait, this pull toward unfulfilled potential, roads not taken, a life imagined but never confirmed. It lingers precisely because it has nowhere to land, no memory to revisit, just a feeling reaching towards something that was never fully real to begin with. Flashbulb memory. You can describe exactly where you were standing, what you were wearing, who told you, the moment you heard a piece of shocking news, details from an ordinary day that should have been forgettable but never were. This is called a flashbulb memory, a term for the unusually vivid, detailed recollection people form around the moment they learned of a surprising or emotionally significant event. Researchers have found these memories feel more accurate than they actually are, the confidence staying high even when details quietly shift over the years. The brain treats the emotional shock like a photograph, stamping the surrounding moment in permanent detail, even if the picture it develops isn't perfectly true. Nostalgia. The word itself was coined by a Swiss physician in the 17th century, describing what he believed was a medical illness, a severe homesickness among soldiers stationed far from home that caused real physical symptoms, loss of appetite, insomnia, even reported deaths. This is called nostalgia, originally treated as a diagnosable disease rather than the wistful, warm feeling the word means today. Over centuries, the meaning softened, shifting from a dangerous longing for a place to a gentler longing for a time. What started as something doctors tried to cure became something people now actively seek out. In old songs, old photographs, old versions of themselves, proof that longing for the past was never really an illness, just a very old, very human ache that outlived its original diagnosis.